Um, so coming back to Pakistan, we're on our 5th day, I believe, and you've done a lot of sessions. You've talked to home brewers, you've talked to baristas, you've talked to coffee shop owners, roasters, even chefs, or you've at least experienced their behaviors around. And you've done classes in Karachi and you've done classes in Lahore as well. What would be like, because you saw their mannerisms, how they interact with coffee and all that, what would be like something that you would say, you'd like impart one advice for all these people, like if you were to give anything to them?
Wow, one piece of advice. I mean, I think
we can make it 3 if you want. We can make it 3.
I think I think it and I don't want to be repetitive. I think it goes back to the idea that, well, one, I will say that it's been such an incredible privilege to meet the people that I have. I mean, one of the things I've just been blown away with is the level of just humility, the level of desiring to learn, to ask questions, kind of like a sponge, just trying to absorb any information, that they can, and being so gracious, and it's just been an incredible, incredible time. I think one of the things goes back to that kind of note about the value of our own experience. I think it's, it really frustrates me sometimes, specifically in coffee, where we see the different kind of personalities or individuals that maybe have a bigger platform or a bigger opportunity to share, and not that those are bad, and I know that they serve their purpose, and it helps to share information, but I think one of the unintended consequences of that is people look at like, oh, well, I don't know anything, or I don't have any knowledge, or I don't have any information, or and I just want to, I really would want the people here to know that, you are valuable. You have value in what you've experienced, and maybe you would it would be great to learn more about X, Y, or Z, but don't devalue what you've already experienced and learned, because it's such an important part of taking that experience, taking opportunities to learn and to grow and to continue forward. And it doesn't, so that would be one thing, is really acknowledge that experience that you have is really valuable and really important. And the other thing I would encourage people with is to just be careful with kind of those myths, or those sometimes kind of oversimplified ways or methods that we talk about at times, and that's part of the why to me, I just a small example, it's like, this is how you when you do a pour over, this is how you do it. And like the first thing that I ask is, well, why? Can I try it a different way? And I'm a big believer that failure is only a failure if we don't learn from it, and so try new things. Try something, challenge the status quo, challenge the norms of what's supposed to be done. If what I've been taught of espresso ratios are always a 1-to-2, try a 1-to-2.5. Try a 1-to-1, try a 1-to-3, try it and learn, and let that experience be kind of that teacher that guides you. And because I think it's easy at times when we see the larger platforms or people that are out there, the YouTubers, whatever it is, to think, oh, they have so much knowledge, they know so much more than me. And I think it's easy sometimes to think about what we don't know while forgetting what we do know. What we do and the experience that we have. Because what I think what Pakistan needs is a coffee market that's built for the Pakistani person, for the Pakistani consumer. And what somebody else in another country is doing, it can be helpful to inform and maybe learn some things, but take that and take the good and take the useful and throw out the stuff that doesn't work and really create it into something that's your own. And that's what I know that's probably more than one thing, but that would be what I would really encourage the coffee community here with, is really envision something that is your own, that follows with the identity of being a Pakistani and the identity of being here in this market, and learn from stuff outside, great, but take the good and take some things and throw the rest out, and build it and make it into your own.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think when making coffee, because I attended one of your classes, and one thing that I just realized, just as a whole, was that intentionality really matters when you're making coffee, right? You're technically in auto mode when you're making like a pour over. You know, you need to do this and then grind and all that. But once you really focus on the elements such as the ratios or the pouring or the wetting of the filter and, you know, cleaning, etc. with coffee, all of that, you really can define your cup while brewing it, you know, once you're doing it. And one of the things we see with these baristas are, because they're in a very rush mode all the time, they're like making coffee every like 5 minutes or 2 minutes, considering, you know, the traffic. And it gets a little bit too tricky for them to figure out a middle way to do it and also enjoy it. But I feel like like the practice that you can do when you don't have a rush, you know, that can help you focus it when you are in that rush hour. You know, find. So one thing about people here is that they love to find shortcuts, but they also want this best quality. So they can find some ways where they can prep stuff up, and then once it's go time, you know, they're ready for it. So that's interesting. So you also visited some like coffee shops as well, in Karachi and Lahore. So what were your like? I don't want to specify, but what were your key takeaways that you would say about the people serving the coffee, the coffee itself, and just generally the vibes, I guess, of different cities?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is, like, in general, like, the service was exceptional. You know, every cafe I went to, you know, people coming over, asking, you know, do you need anything? Just the engagement of service at that level, I thought was, you know, was really wonderful. I thought it was really interesting to see some of the creativity of different drinks, different beverages. I know that, you know, there's a range of thoughts and opinions about those different beverages and those different drinks. So, you know, that's maybe a completely different conversation, but I think that the ingenuity and creativity I really appreciated. I had some wonderful coffees, and it was really good to, you know, be able to have a delicious cup of coffee. But, you know, one thing that I think that I love about being in the coffee industry is that so often sitting down and drinking a cup of coffee, you either are, I always think about serving that cup of coffee to somebody is a part of their either experience socializing together with other people, or they're having kind of a moment of, you know, introspection and thinking, or, you know, they're getting some work done. It provides, there's such a cool, I think, connection with people. And what I enjoyed about going around to the cafes and seeing was being able to connect with people over something that we both love, and that we both enjoy together. And I think there's a difference in preferences and different types of consumers, and I think we just have to be aware that what one person likes and what another person likes we don't devalue that, or we don't say one's greater than the other. You drink black coffee and you drink stuff in your coffee, so you're better than other people. But it's actually providing that experience that I think, to me, is the real value of the coffee industry. And you like to drink coffee a certain way, great, drink it the way that you like to. And so so that was one thing, a couple things that I saw and really enjoyed. I mean, I thought the aesthetic in a lot of the cafes are really cool. The vibe was great. I was, really impressed with many of the cafes we went to during our time here.
That's interesting. Yeah. So it's a two-part question. Like, what do you think is like a good building platform or like an education program for the people, the home brewers, the coffee shop owners, even the baristas? What's essential for a market that's at the level of maturity that is Pakistan? In terms of specialty coffee, I would even say.
I mean, I think that for a growing kind of emerging market like Pakistan is, I think one, not forgetting the basics. You know, like the old adage, you know, you have to crawl before you walk, kind of thing. And you know, I think it's fun to jump into the deep end of the pool, right? And to experience that, and that's fine. But I think it's really important that we lay the foundation and the building blocks for an understanding of coffee so that we can make it our own. We're not just reliant on an outsider or somebody else to continue to kind of show us what the next direction or next, you know, step is. And you know, it's important that we establish those kind of foundation and critical concepts and components that we can then, again, it goes back to the tools on the tool belt, right? Like making sure that we understand what a hammer does and what a screwdriver does so that we can really build something great. And so I think that's one thing that I would say is a really critical part. I think the other thing is localizing that information, you know, like really taking ownership of creating resources and tools in local languages that provide really critical information for people here. You know, like I think there's such a cool thing when somebody's able to experience that in their own language. Language is such a huge part of culture and part of our identity, and so I think there's a great opportunity there as well, where, you know, instead of seeing it as, you know, something where that's imported, these ideas are imported, but no, we actually can develop this and it's something that is our own and we can own it. I think not forgetting the quote unquote average consumer in the process either. You know, and when we talk about the trends of coffee, we oftentimes talk about these waves: first wave, second wave, third wave. And I don't really know why we get obsessed with waves and beaches, but it's just the way that we've talked about it. So, but I think what's important is that if we're inviting the consumer to be a part of this as well, I think it's important that we meet the consumer where they are. I think a big mistake that the kind of specialty high quality coffee industry made in the US was it almost challenged people to come to us instead of us coming to where people are. And you know, people are at different places of their journey. You know, I was at the hotel this morning and I saw somebody walk up to the hot water stand and make an instant coffee, and I was really intrigued by it. Like, I wanted to ask him, like, do you always drink coffee? Like, is that how you drink your? And instead of like, oh gosh, he drinks instant coffee, like that's gross, I was actually more interested to know, like, when did you start drinking coffee? Do you always drink that instant? Like, learning more and going to where people are at, both like geographically, but also like where they are in that journey, and walking and learning together through that. I think is something that would be a really couple important points to focus on and to not forget. No, that's really interesting. You know, you talk about training and training the people at where they are in the stage of the coffee world. You know, everyone starts off with instant coffee. You know, I started off with instant coffee, and then, you know, the first gadget I picked up was a V60, and then ever since then I've been trying to perfect it, but it's not happening. But the point is that you know, you meet the people where they are in that journey, and then you help them along the way to figure out what, you know, what suits them best in terms of gadgets or whatever. So I mean, obviously you've given trainings in, you know, internationally, different regions, as you mentioned before. How do you think is it going to be any different in, for example, if let's say there's going to be a training program, right? How do you feel like it's going to be different for the Pakistani market as compared to, like, I don't know, the Indonesian market or like the Costa Rican market? I mean, I think there are certain kind of fundamental foundational aspects that will be very similar. You know, creating good foundation, creating opportunities to learn. I think that will be very consistent. I mean, specifically with a country like Indonesia, who's a coffee producer, like obviously there's some aspects of education there that wouldn't be in this market. And so I think there's going to be some maybe tracks or some educational programs that might be unique just based off of where the market is and where the trends are and where things are going. But I think that I think at its core, though, a lot of the foundational concepts of brewing, of preparing coffee, of running a coffee business. I think a lot of people, when they think about coffee education, they think about making pretty latte art. And not that making pretty latte art is bad. You don't want me to teach latte art, I promise. But it's not that those things are bad, but like how to run a successful coffee business is, in my opinion, even more important in coffee education than how to make pretty latte art, actually seeing coffee be sustainable for people from an economic level, I think is a really important part. And not that I don't think that's unique to Pakistan. I think that's going to be true in any market. How do we run better coffee businesses? How do we take care of our employees? How do we, create these programs and these companies that are successful? And so I think that's, again, I don't think that's necessarily anything different. I think in many ways that would be very similar. I think what might be something that's unique is, coffee has, while I'm sure you could find people and there are pockets of communities that have consumed coffee for a long period of time or maybe have a longer history. Generally speaking, as I understand, the kind of coffee is a newer direction, a newer product for the overall Pakistani market. And so I think some of the newness of that, there's going to need to be an education about, what is coffee, and what is this Arabica like, like what are these different things and how do I engage with that? And so some more kind of like emphasis on some of those foundational concepts and understandings that I think in other markets, because they have a longer history of consuming coffee, even though I would argue there's probably some misunderstanding and some things that they get wrong, there's at least a longer history of consumption. And so people might have a little bit wider or deeper of an understanding or frame of reference for coffee. Whereas here, you have a lot of new to coffee. And so as somebody who's new to coffee that might travel to another country and go to a cafe and see all these names and places and things, they're trying to kind of sort through all of what that means as well. So I think that might be one area that the market here kind of a better kind of, again, foundational understanding about what coffee is that would help inform the directions forward.
So, that sort of answers my next question as well, because what I was going to ask was, why do you feel like coffee training or coffee education is important at this stage of development in the market, right? Because it's still growing, but again, it comes down to like they should know the basics, or they should at least be informed enough that they know, like you said, what an Arabica is, or why it's the way that it is, or what is a Robusta, and if is there a third type of bean that we don't know about, or a fourth, something like that.
But I think the other thing about coffee education, so there's the information aspect, the foundational concepts, but I really think coffee education is important because I think it provides an opportunity to showcase value in that as a pursuit. Well, sometimes I think in some areas, a cafe job, and look, sometimes you need a paycheck, right? And there was an opening, and so I went and I did it, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not anything, a lower value to that. But I think by investing in creating educational programs, we showcase that this role as a barista, as a roaster, as working in coffee is something that we can really own as being valuable. It's kind of this professionalization of that industry, instead of it just being, I'm my family or somebody thinks I've kind of taken the shortcut route, or I haven't really pursued something of value. I'm just working as a barista like that. No, I think coffee education gives somebody the opportunity to really take pride and value in that as a profession. And because of that, we can approach that with a level of professionalism. And I think that's what I always try to, even from coffee production and processing all the way through to the roastery and the cafe and you know, on to selling consumer, like really encouraging people to own that as something that is valuable. Like this is not a second rate or a lower tier type of profession, you know, in the service industry, you know, it's something that we can actually really elevate and know and pursue with a level of professionalism and advance through that industry but we have to approach it with that intentionality, right? To kind of your point earlier, you know, we have to approach it with that. We can't just take it as, you know, look, if all I do is I approach it as this is my 9 to 5, this is, you know, I clock in, I clock out, fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but there's an opportunity through education to, you know, building those educational programs to showcase how we can elevate that as something of value, something of worth to pursue.
All right, that's a pretty good answer. Like that made me thinking. I was like, what? All right.